In February 1945, near the end of World War II, a group of Japanese soldiers retreated across Ramree Island off the coast of Burma, now Myanmar. They were exhausted, they were surrounded, and the only escape route left to them led into a mangrove swamp. What happened next became one of the most terrifying stories of World War II. According to the legend, hundreds of soldiers entered the swamp during the night. By morning, only a small number came out alive. But they were not said to have been killed by bullets. They were said to have been taken by crocodiles. For decades, the Ramree Island Crocodile Massacre has been described as one of the deadliest animal attacks in recorded history. But the deeper you look into the story, the stranger it becomes. Because Ramree Island was not just a battlefield. It was a place where geography, war, fear, disease, mud, darkness, and one of the most dangerous predators on Earth all came together. And even today, no one fully agrees on what really happened in that swamp. Ramree Island lies off the western coast of Myanmar, in the Bay of Bengal, along a rugged coastal region once known as Arakan. It is not a tiny island. It is large, flat, humid, and surrounded by tidal waterways. Its coast is broken by creeks, mudflats, and mangrove forests. In places like this, the land and water do not stay neatly separate. The tide moves in and out, channels fill and empty. Mud can look solid until a man steps into it and sinks. This is not the kind of landscape where movement is easy. A mangrove swamp is a maze. Tree roots rise out of the mud like claws. The water is dark. The ground is unstable. Every step takes effort. At night, the whole place becomes almost impossible to read. To a soldier trying to escape, it would not feel like open country. It would feel like being swallowed by the island itself. During World War II, Ramree Island became strategically important because of where it sat. By 1945, Allied forces were pushing back through Burma after years of Japanese occupation. Airfields mattered, ports mattered, coastal islands mattered. Ramree offered something valuable, a position near the mainland that could help support further operations. So in January 1945, British and Indian forces attacked the island as part of the Burma campaign. Their goal was to take control of key positions, including the area around Kyaukpyu, near the northern end of the island. The Japanese defenders resisted, but they were under pressure. Allied troops, naval power, and air support gradually pushed them back. As the battle developed, some Japanese soldiers found themselves cut off. Their options were narrowing. Surrender was unlikely. Breaking through Allied lines was dangerous. So a large group tried to escape through the mangrove swamp. On a normal map, that might look like a route. On the ground, it was something else entirely. It was mud, heat, insects, salt water, disease, darkness, and water channels that could hide anything beneath the surface. And in this part of the world, one of those hidden dangers was the saltwater crocodile. The saltwater crocodile is the largest living reptile on Earth. Large males can grow over 5 meters long, with rare individuals reaching even greater sizes. They are powerful, patient predators built for ambush. Their eyes, ears, and nostrils sit high on the head, allowing them to remain almost completely submerged while still watching, breathing, and listening. This is what makes them so unsettling. They do not need to reveal themselves. A saltwater crocodile can wait under the surface with only a ripple, a nostril, or a pair of eyes showing above the water. They eat fish, birds, turtles, wild pigs, livestock, and almost anything they can overpower. And yes, under the wrong conditions, they can and do attack humans. They were the perfect predators for this swamp. Hidden beneath the dark water, they could strike with almost no warning. And for exhausted soldiers stumbling through the shallows, wounded, thirsty, and terrified, the crocodiles would have seemed like monsters. To the soldiers, the swamp would have felt alive. The Japanese retreat into the mangroves is where the story turns from military history into something closer to nightmare. Imagine being one of those men. You have already survived bombing, shelling, gunfire, hunger, and exhaustion. You are far from home. The war is turning against you. Your unit is broken. The enemy controls the open ground. So you follow the others into the swamp because there is nowhere else to go. At first, the swamp may seem like cover, The trees hide you from the air, the channels break up the land, the roots create confusion, but soon that cover becomes a prison. Boots sink into mud, equipment becomes heavy, weapons clog, mosquitoes swarm around exposed skin, saltwater burns cuts and wounds. The air is thick and rotten, carrying the smell of mud, vegetation, stagnant water, and decay. Every movement makes noise, every splash gives away your position, and as darkness falls, the swamp changes. In daylight, a mangrove forest is difficult. At night, it becomes almost blind. You cannot see where the mud ends and the water begins. You cannot tell whether the sound ahead is another soldier, a falling branch, a bird, or something moving through the channel. The tide keeps moving. Water rises around roots and ankles. Men who are already weak stumble and fall. Some may be wounded. Some may have malaria. Some may be sick and dysentery. Some may have dehydration or infections. Clean drinking water is almost impossible to find. The swamp does not need crocodiles to be deadly, but according to the legend, the crocodiles came too. The famous story says that during the night, saltwater crocodiles moved through the mangrove channels and attacked the trapped Japanese soldiers. The story is almost cinematic in its horror. Scattered rifle shots in the dark, screams from the swamp, splashes in black water, men firing at shapes they could barely see, crocodiles pulling bodies beneath the surface, survivors trying to climb through roots while the mud held them back. It is easy to understand why this story spread. It has everything: war, isolation, darkness, a desperate retreat, and a predator that feels almost prehistoric. Ramree Island became more than a battlefield. It became a warning, a place where the enemy was not just the opposing army, the enemy was the island itself. But to understand why this story is so powerful, you have to imagine what spending a night in that swamp would actually feel like. There would be no silence. A swamp at night is full of sound: insects, birds, water, branches shifting, fish breaking the surface, mud sucking at boots, men coughing, men whispering, men trying not to panic. The darkness would play tricks on the mind. A splash nearby might be nothing, or it might be something very large turning in the water. The mangrove roots would make movement slow and painful. You could not run properly, you could not form neat lines, you could not easily carry the wounded. Every man would become focused on the small patch of mud or water in front of him. And then there is the psychological horror. When soldiers are trapped, exhausted, and afraid, imagination becomes another enemy. Paranoia moves through a group faster than any animal. One soldier hears a scream. Another says he saw eyes in the water. Someone fires. Someone else panics. Suddenly, the whole swamp feels surrounded. Were there crocodiles in the area? Very likely. Could crocodiles have attacked wounded or isolated another soldier? That is possible. Could they have fed on bodies already killed by combat, drowning, disease, or exhaustion? That is also possible. But whether hundreds of living soldiers were killed by crocodiles in one coordinated night is the part of the story that becomes much harder to prove. Still, if even a few attacks happened in that darkness, the terror would have been immense. A saltwater crocodile does not attack like a land predator chasing across open ground. It comes from the water, often suddenly. A man standing near the edge of a channel might not know anything is there until the strike happens. The jaws close, the body is pulled sideways, the water erupts, then, just as quickly, the surface settles again. In daylight, that would be horrifying. At night, in a swamp surrounded by wounded men and enemy forces, it would be almost unbearable. By morning, the swamp would have looked different. The sounds of the night would fade. The heat would return. Vultures and other scavengers would appear. Survivors, if they could still move, would emerge filthy, dehydrated, and broken. The Allied forces would find men who had made it through the swamp and many who had not. From that morning onward, the story of Ramree Island began to grow. Some versions say only around 20 Japanese soldiers survived from a group of nearly 1,000. Other versions give different numbers. Over time, the crocodile part became the center of the story. It was repeated in books. It appeared in record collections. It became famous online. It became the Crocodile Massacre. But there is a problem. The huge crocodile death toll is disputed. Modern researchers have pointed out that official military reports do not clearly confirm a massive crocodile feeding event. Some historians argue that many Japanese soldiers probably died from more ordinary but still horrific causes: battle wounds, dehydration, disease, drowning, starvation, exposure, and the brutal conditions of the mangrove swamp. That may sound less sensational, but in some ways it is even darker, because it means Ramree Island was not necessarily a simple story of crocodiles eating hundreds of men. The truth may have been less dramatic, but even more disturbing. Many soldiers may have died gradually from exhaustion, wounds, disease, dehydration, and the harsh conditions of the swamp. Crocodiles may have been part of the terror, but they were not the only danger. That is what makes Ramree so disturbing. The truth is not clean. The legend is too dramatic to fully trust, but the real situation was still terrifying. A defeated force entered a swamp where every natural condition worked against human survival. War pushed them there. Geography trapped them there. Nature finished what war had started. And what about the crocodiles? Saltwater crocodiles can live for many decades. They still inhabit parts of South and Southeast Asia, including coastal rivers, wetlands, mangroves, and island shorelines across their range. Whether the exact crocodiles of the Ramree story remain there for years after the battle is impossible to say, but the species itself belongs to that world of tidal water, mangrove roots, and hidden channels. That is the chilling final thought. The human battle ended in 1945. The armies left. The war moved on. The story became history, then legend, then internet folklore. But the swamp remained. The tides kept rising and falling. The mangroves kept growing. The mud kept holding whatever sank into it. And somewhere in that kind of water, a crocodile can wait almost completely unseen. Ramree Island is remembered because of the crocodile story. But the real reason it stays with us is bigger than that. It is a reminder that in war, the battlefield is not just made of soldiers, weapons, and strategy. Sometimes the land itself becomes part of the battle. Sometimes geography decides who survives. And sometimes, when men are pushed into the wrong place at the wrong time, history becomes so terrifying that even decades later, no one can fully separate fact from nightmare.